morning, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us today on the webinar. So my name is Jamie Ross and I'm the Partnership Director for UMI, and we're hosting this webinar for the EM3 Growth Hub. I just want to give you a little bit of background information on the Growth Hub, just in case you are new. These are a fully funded business support service, and it provides advice, coaching, webinars, and signposting to small to medium enterprises. And their mission is to help recover, adapt, develop sustainable growth, and become more productive and profitable. All businesses at any stage of their development can access and benefit from the Enterprise M3 Growth Hub services, including support around COVID recovery and the UK transition support. And additionally, there is a specialist growth service targeted at businesses operating in key sectors, which can offer businesses up to 2 days of free one-to-one business support and mentoring. Have a look at the Enterprise M3 growthhub.co.uk for more information on that. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker this morning, Sarah Callender from Duo Consulting.
Good morning. Hi.
Good morning, Sarah.
Hi. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having us. I think we're going to dive straight into today's webinar. I was just chatting to Jamie, everybody, and explaining how we really want you to interact on this session. So if you've got anything to ask, feel free to do so. Use the chat give us a shout. We're going to have questions all the way through, and I know Jamie's going to dive into. So today's subject is headlined as resilience and driving purposeful action. But really what we're going to do over the next sort of 45 minutes is talk about where potentially you're at within your business and your journey, because I know the last few months, we're coming up to a year, has been particularly testing from a resilience standpoint. But we've also, we've got a job to do. We've got to spot opportunities and remain focused and purposeful in the actions that we take. So I'm part of the business called Duo Global Consulting, as Jamie alluded to, and we kind of specialise in helping businesses drive strategic change, really looking at the people within the organisation. How do we drive the people that work within the business and the clients that we work with? How do we make sure that they're working as purposeful as they can do in order to drive the best outcomes? So we're going to be going through a model which we referenced in some of the promo, I think, which is called the drama triangle and the empowerment dynamic. And we're going to be having a chat through that particular model in relation to business context. So without further ado, I am going to just share my screen and share with you a bit of a presentation, but really, these are just reference points. So as I said, feel free to ask questions. So just give me a nod, Jamie, if you can see the screen there. Great.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, so really, what is resilience? And, resilience can be referenced in lots of different ways. What I'm really referring to in today's subject is how do you maintain your resilience levels when there's lots of change going on, maybe when stress levels are high? How do you look at recovering from things that are thrown your way that potentially you didn't foresee? Now, what I don't want anybody to do in this session is to start judging themselves and thinking about their own resilience levels. What I do want you to do is to think about what potentially might trigger and test your resilience levels in order for you to spot that and be able to do something about it. So, the definition really of resilience is defined as your ability to adapt well and recover quickly after change, adversity, stress, or even sometimes trauma. And the current situation, the pandemic and what we've all sort of experienced over the last 8-9 months has definitely tested, I would say, 99% of people's resilience levels, but everybody's journey has been different. So we could all probably write a book about what the last 9 months has felt like for us. And everybody's journey would have felt different. And most people that certainly we're doing work with and our clients and the exec coaching that we do, a lot of the feedback we're getting is that everybody's resilience levels has dipped at different times. So there's, people describe the roller coaster. We've got people describing the different levels of lockdown, and some people are finding this particular lockdown really difficult. Some found the first one really difficult. Everybody's journey is really, really different, and everybody's sort of work context is different, and everybody's personal lives are different. So really what we want you to think about is, how do you help yourself in order to maintain and ensure that your resilience levels are the best they can be? So almost look at preventative rather than, once you've hit the brick wall and the stress levels are really high, looking at how to tackle it then. We want you to kind of think about it in advance. So really, the last few months has been a trying time for most. Now, some businesses have really thrived and are doing great. Other businesses have had to cease trading. Some businesses just haven't been able to function because of the restrictions. We're definitely finding that even those businesses that have had to flex or change, it's been a difficult time to adapt. So even those people who've managed to do that, it has been a stressful time. So what we want you to really to think about is your ability to respond to and deal effectively with any kind of change. And that's kind of the key factor to resilience. It's how do you successfully and healthfully navigate uncertainty and uncertain times. And never has there been a test bed for testing that as there has been for over the last few months. I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and they were saying we've basically experienced probably 10 years worth of change in a period of about 9 months. From a technology standpoint, from an advancements in the way that we work, there's been an awful lot of what I call forced change. So that's change that we didn't anticipate, that isn't our choice, we didn't choose to do it. All the business plans have, most of them have been thrown up and thrown out the window, or they've had to be adapted. And that in itself has been done at a pace that hasn't necessarily been what we've planned to do. So I want you just to think about your business. It would be really interesting to get a sense check as to what's been sort of your biggest challenge. So I'm just going to run a little poll, and these are 5 major challenges. This come from a piece of research that has been carried out over the last sort of 3 months. What are the 5? These are the 5 major challenges business owners right now are feeling, and I want you to. We're just going to pop up a poll in a sec, but I want you to think about which one you resonate most with, and which one do you resonate most with now. Rose, are you able to launch that poll? Yeah, so perfect. So I just want you to choose which one has been the one that resonates the most with you. So is it managing finance and cash flow, keeping up with legislation, finding balance and achieving a healthy mindset, dealing with information overload, or selecting the right focus? So I just want you to select the one that you think resonates the most with you, and then we will share the results.
Just quickly, Sarah, while that's waiting to come through, in terms of resilience in any change, many moons ago I was a personal trainer, and I always take the learnings from that to today. And whenever you're changing anything or approaching something for the first time, you need to build it almost into a habit forming, and it can't just happen like that. And if you approach it as, actually this is, if you're going to do a marathon, you wouldn't want to do it next week if you haven't trained for it, for instance.
It's really interesting, and just for a little bit of context, I'm a behavioral change coach, so I've actually studied behavior, and the people's mindset around change are all different. So there's 3 different levels of change. Some people are really resistant to change, and their behaviors mean that actually that it doesn't matter what the change is, they would be resistant to it or apprehensive, or it would cause them stress potentially. The middle kind of bracket is where people are happy for change if they feel like it's for improvement's sake. So they'll get on board if they feel like there's a good enough reason to get on board. And the third sort of stage is where people have a real appetite for change, and it's change for change's sake. They just want to be the first to do it. the early adopters of everything. So one size doesn't fit all. Some people can break habits way quicker. And it's interesting you say about the personal training, for sure. I mean, I think in that context, they say 2 weeks, takes about 2 weeks to start to change a habit. But we're all different, for some of us, and it depends on the context of the change.
I agree totally. I think also, like, the fact that you go into a gym, you're in that state of ambivalence, between should I or shouldn't I?
Yeah.
And I suppose once you're in that state, you're ready to then move on to the next stage.
Absolutely. And when it's forced change, sometimes that can knock people out of kilt because they weren't expecting it. Some people's resilience levels means that they jump into that change really quickly and they deal with it. And sometimes they have an aftermath afterwards. Like, it really does depend. It's a fascinating subject, and how people deal with it. So the results are in, so they say, and so we have got a mixed bag from the group. So managing finance and cash flow, and finding balance and achieving a healthy mindset is come up top. And certainly the last two sort of are still a good 20%. And I think as time has gone on, that managing finance and cash flow has become more of a challenge, obviously. I think in the first couple of months, people were able to sort of bridge the gap and manage it. But as it's gone on longer, I think, and the uncertainty piece has been a big one, I think, around just not knowing. So not being able to plan and having lack of control in the business is tough. Okay, thanks for that, guys. If you wouldn't mind closing the poll, that would be fab. So that gives us a bit of a sense check as to where people are at. And I think, it's really important to just take a moment and realize that everybody, I honestly, I haven't worked with any business over the last 9 months that hasn't struggled in one way, shape or form. And not only them, if from a leadership ownership perspective, but their staff, they're all on different sort of trajectories too. So that even sometimes when things have been good, sometimes the shutting of schools has been a massive impact on people working from home, for example. So for those people who've got children, that's really tested their resilience levels. So yeah, everybody's experience is different. And I think as leaders within a business, what's tough is we have to be seen to be leading from the front. So it's almost like, getting that balance between feeling that you can be vulnerable and share kind of your empathy and that you're going through the journey too, but leading from the front and really being strong for the rest of the business and showing them a way forward. I know that there's a lot of our business leaders that we work with on a regular basis have really struggled with getting the sort of the rationale behind we must do this, we need to cut costs, we need to think about diversifying, we need to all work from home, all of those big shifts that they've had to sort of digest and then filter through the business has been tough because they haven't had a moment almost to think about how am I actually coping with this. And there's a lot of people currently struggling now more than they did at the start, just purely through the length of time things have gone on. And even if you take the COVID situation out of the equation, businesses face change all of the time. You lose a client and they equate to 40% of your income. That's huge on a business. You lose a key member of staff that are significant in leading a function of the business. Again, that's changed. So even if you take the COVID context out, what we're going to share now and look into is relevant regardless of what situation we're in. I'm putting it in the context of COVID just to make it relevant now, but I'm going to share this model with you. And I think it'll be super useful regardless of, even over the next few years, because we're going to face change. That's inevitable. It's one thing that's an absolute certainty. The next few years that we have in business and personal life, there will be change thrown at us. And it's how we adapt to that, which is really helps define who we are as a business. So the drama triangle. Now, I don't know if anybody has ever heard of the drama triangle, please just pop it in the chat and let me know. But to be honest with you, this is a model that I was exposed to a few years ago. And we just thought, gosh, this is such a super useful model. It's an old model. It was devised by a guy called Stephen Cartman. And it actually demonstrates human interaction and the connection between personal responsibility and ownership during times of conflict or change. So how do you respond? How do you take responsibility? How do you take ownership? And people and organizations can spend a lot of time in the drama triangle space, and that'll make sense to you when I show you what that space looks like. Drama is characterized by blaming, complaining, and defensive behavior and wanting to be right. So it can often stem from a place of fear. So when we often describe, you'll have people in your life that like drama. You might have an auntie or a partner or a friend or a colleague who tends to feel like they're in a whirlwind of drama every time you see them. Some people do find themselves in operating out of a place of drama frequently across their lives, across different contexts of their lives. But in business, drama is not good. Drama is not a great place to operate from. And so I'm going to share this model with you. First of all, I'm going to play a little animation. It's a 2.5-minute animation, which basically describes the model and the empowerment dynamic, which is kind of the antidote to the drama triangle. So we're going to share with you the bad version, and then we're going to give you a solution and the good version, and how to transition through from the drama triangle into the empowerment dynamic. And this is where this links lovely to that purposeful present action stuff that we're gonna look at. The empowerment dynamic was actually something that was devised by a guy called David Emerald, and we spotted it as a really great alternative to the drama triangle. And basically it describes sort of a mind shift between elevating out of one space into another, where greater options and outcomes can be achieved. So by elevating out of the drama triangle space and into a more empowered area, you can take control to your response to a situation of change, or drive higher levels of success. What that means in a business context is, if your business is operating from the drama triangle, is there a team that is operating from the drama triangle, or are there people? Now, nobody's immune, so we will all drop into the drama triangle at some point. But what I want you to think about when I play the animation is, where do you feel your business is currently? Where do you feel you are currently? Where do you feel potentially some of your team is, if you have teams of people? There might be a particular area of the business where drama tends to sit. And that is linked to the resilience of the people and how they respond to change. So I'm going to just play you this short animation. This we will share this with you, so you'll be able to go and look at this after the session and use it as a reference point. But let me just play this for you.
Do you know the difference between working from a place of purpose and presence versus from the drama triangle? Working from a place of purpose and presence is above the line, whilst working from the drama triangle is below the line. A lot of organisations spend most of their time unknowingly working within the drama triangle. Drama is characterised by blaming, complaining, defensiveness, and wanting to be right. This often stems from a place of fear. Like a good series on Netflix, every drama has characters. This is no different for the drama triangle. The drama triangle has a hero, a villain, and a victim. The hero seeks relief, but this is often temporary. The hero is often the one who swoops in and saves the day, instead of teaching someone the tools and techniques to save themselves. The hero will often give someone the bread without showing them how to bake it for themselves. The role of the hero is to do things that make the immediate pain go away without facing and solving the core issue. You can be the hero to both yourself and others, and it is often driven from not wanting anyone to feel bad. This can manifest as you doing things that provide temporary relief, like comfort eating or drinking. With others, it can sound like, "It'll be okay. Don't worry, I will do it for you." Often heroes are seeking value by being needed by others. The second role in the drama triangle is the villain. The villain's job is to blame others or themselves. When you blame yourself, this can sound like, "I shouldn't have eaten that pizza. I'm not working hard enough." When you blame others, you may say, "It's not my fault," or "You messed that up." The final role of the drama triangle is the role of the victim. The role of the victim is to feel like life is happening to them and they are powerless over it. This could be at the effect of your boss, your kids, your job, your body, your mood, the people around you. When you are in victim mode, you often feel stuck and helpless. When people and teams move above the line into a place of purpose and presence, their role changes. This is the empowerment dynamic. The victim becomes the creator. The creator takes responsibility for their life and stops complaining about what is happening to them. When in creator, you own the power to choose, respond, and focus on outcomes. The villain becomes the challenger. The challenger applies healthy pressure to support themselves or others in facing and dealing with situations that evokes learning, growth, and action. Unlike the villain, they don't blame, complain, or get defensive. When working with purpose and presence, the hero becomes the coach. The coach doesn't try to fix anyone and sees everyone as fully empowered, owners of their own destiny. They support and facilitate clarity by asking questions, driving others to take responsibility for creating the life they really want. When leaders and teams learn to work above the line in the empowerment dynamic, they find that they are more creative, engaged, and productive. So the choice is yours. Are you working from purpose and presence, or the drama triangle?
So what I want you to think about is, from your perspective, where do you think potentially over the last few months has there been a point where your business or you has dropped into that drama triangle space? Has there been a time where you found that there's been a particular team where they have, or you've had clients where that they've dropped into that drama triangle space? It's really interesting because I'll give you some context to this. If you think about it from a hero perspective, often people think the hero is the best place to be if you're in the drama triangle. You're often in this space because subconsciously you don't know you're in it. This is the thing. This is the watch out. It's not that you're consciously saying, "Oh, well, I'm now going to drop into this space." You will drop into it unknowingly, and particularly if things are tough or stressful. So we may have found ourselves in the victim spot over the last few months, sporadically. Sometimes it can be a day, sometimes it can be a week. Some people have felt like they've been in there for a long time, where they just basically, you just think, well, there's nothing I can do about this, so therefore. The villain spot is more around where you're looking to blame other people. Now, there's been lots of people blaming the government, whoever they can find to blame for the current circumstances. We're blaming clients, we're blaming ourselves for not necessarily having a B plan before this kind of thing happened. The hero can often be where you find yourself swooping in and doing things for other members of the team or other people within the business and finding a fix, but not really giving them the tools to be able to do it themselves. So sometimes often people gravitate to the hero spot because they feel like it's the most comfortable, but actually all three are destructive roles if you sit in them for any great length of time. So we've had businesses say to us, well, I often, as a manager, for example, I swoop in. It's this feeling of wanting to be needed and like this feeling of like, well, I'll probably do it better than them anyway, so I might as well just do it for them. So this often happens when managers are struggling to delegate down or relinquish control and give other members of the team control over things. So they end up like half doing it and then swooping in all the time and sometimes being seen to be saving the day. Like, you can't deal with this client, I'll better swoop in and save the day. There's an issue. That's okay if like there's a fast deadline and you need to jump in and help out, but you need to think about, are you giving the other people an opportunity to be able to elevate themselves and to do things for themselves? We once did some work with a business, and actually there was a manager within the business who'd had some personal circumstances, like really tricky outside of work. So they were all given a really easy ride at work. They didn't want to put any additional pressure on her, and it all came from a really great place. But they did that for a couple of months. By the end of it, this person had slipped into victim. She felt like she couldn't do it anymore. She felt like she wasn't capable of doing her job. She just felt helpless inside and outside of work. And what we looked at, we said, actually, these are all helping her too much, to a point where she feels like she can't do it herself anymore. She needed to be elevated to say, come on, you've got this, you can do it. And it's really important that if you spot any of your team or colleagues or clients dropping into this environment, to elevate yourself out of it and don't get dragged in, because behaviour breeds behaviour. Before we know it, we've had conversations and we're all spiraled and we've all dropped into the drama triangle space. And this is particularly important if you think at leadership level, where you're working maybe you've got a business partner, or there's a few of you at leadership in a senior management team, where you're very careful about how you talk to each other and how you influence each other's behaviour.
And Sarah, I was going to ask actually, how important at that leadership level is self-reflection and humility?
Well, I would say, humility is one of my core values. So I would say humility is absolutely important in my view. I know that's a subjective view, but for sure, I think that humility piece is really important. But what we don't want to do is to express too much humility in so for example, what I mean by that is, in that example I just gave, sometimes businesses can develop such a nurturing, lovely environment. It manifests into a cozy culture, which means then people can't have difficult conversations. Nobody's really being held accountable. We're all really good pals and we'll help each other out. And before you know it, the performance of the business isn't at where it needs to be. So humility in the respect of respecting each other and everybody has a voice, that kind of thing, I think for sure. But you do have to be careful not to create an environment that doesn't elevate people to be their best, that doesn't drive people to grow and be fantastic, that lets them sit and stagnate and be mediocre. We want to make sure that, as certainly from a leadership perspective, that we're encouraging that from top down and from bottom up. The other thing is really it's this blame environment often, or this need to want to be right, or this fear. Most of that stuff is driven from a subconscious level. So we don't sit and go, oh, I'm behaving like this because of fear. It's deep rooted. It's stuff maybe you were told you weren't good at something previously in a previous role, and you bring that with you. And before you know it, if you're challenged on it again, you drop into one of these three roles. You get into villain and you're blaming the manager for being not nice or saying something they shouldn't have, or you're in victim, where you just think, it's not my problem, I'm just going to opt out here, I'm helpless, I'm not even going to get involved. I would say at leadership level, that's not a given. You've got it, it's your responsibility, even if it's not your area of the business. If you're leading, it's a responsibility to help each other, but more importantly, to elevate the people around you to get up and take action themselves. So this can often be, you see how the arrows on the diagram go both ways? Sometimes what happens is you can move through the positions. So sometimes you can actually be in a villain spot and then you drop into victim. You're blaming everybody and then it's right, I'll give up, I'm not doing anything, and you just sit in victim. So they're actually, you will transition through them. And there's a triangle because often there's two people involved. So, if a hero is diving in to help a victim, they'll stay in victim. They're not elevating them out of it. They're just, because someone's just come in and did it for them. If a villain is sort of, if you're in a villain mindset, and I know the word villain's a bit in some models they call it the persecutor, but basically it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you've got in a mindset where you're blaming other people and not taking responsibility. We literally have a rule in our business: there's no blaming, complaining, or getting defensive. There are three things that we just say. If you find yourself in that kind of mindset and behavior, go and do something to get out of it, because, and we pull each other up on it, because it's not productive, it's not useful, and it's not useful for the person in it. That's the most important piece to remember. Nobody wants to.
I guess it also kind of helps disguise where there's potential issues or mistakes, and you can't really reflect on those.
Absolutely. That reflective question, sorry, I forgot you did ask about reflective. Reflective practice is great for some people. Like, if we look at my behaviors, I'm a highly initiated person. So I take initiation, I want action, I want to move forward. Like, I don't do enough. I have to put reflective practice in my day to make sure that I stop and think. Strategy drives me to be more reflective because I'm quite strategic, but for some people, reflection is such a big piece of their day. Like, they want the time to think and have more of a reflective sort of, they want to analyze and take stock. So again, it's that one size doesn't fit all. Like, I think in universities, we've certainly seen like reflective teaching has driven students to become more reflective, because it's been forced, that practice has been forced all the way through university. So we're finding that people, when we do recruitment, there's a lot of young people coming out of university where actually they're almost too reflective, and they can't take initiate. They find it more difficult to initiate themselves because they've been kind of encouraged to be reflective. So I think there's pros and cons is the answer to that question, Jamie, and it depends on the role. But in this case, if we're thinking about people imagine sitting in the drama triangle space for too long. Self-reflection is not a great place. We want you to pull out of that space into the empowerment dynamic. So I know this will be difficult, but I want to just get a little bit of a sense check on where people feel like they might sit the most. You will have a dominant spot, like a dominant role in the drama triangle. Now, this means that for some people who are high initiation, they won't sit in there very long. So if I drop in the drama triangle space, I tend not to sit in it too long because it feels really uncomfortable for me. If you're more reflective, you might stay there a bit longer and think about it. So, but you will have a dominant. So some of you might think, well, I'm more that, but then sometimes I'm that. If you really think about it, you will have one spot that you tend to drop into. So this is anonymous, so we don't know anybody and we're not going to say anything, but I want, if you could just open the next poll, please, Rose, that'd be great. Which role in the drama triangle do you fall into the most? And I want you to think about context, because it will differ. So think about like maybe some scenarios. So it could be when a client, like, where do you drop when you get like a really bit of bad news from a client? What tends to happen when forced change comes? What tends to happen when your stress levels increase? Because that's when you tend to drop into the drama triangle. It's not like on an everyday basis. It's usually when something happens, when your resilience levels are tested. So cross-check the different scenarios, i.e. something happens on a client project. If you have a disagreement with a colleague, goodness, it happens. When your stress levels are high, or during periods of change. So do you think you tend to fall into hero, villain, or victim? And I'll be open with mine. Mine does tend to be hero, because I used to have a big thing about having to feel needed. I've had to work on that. So I tend to give people the skills to do it themselves rather than jumping in and doing it for them now. But that's a thing I really struggled with.
What's interesting, Sarah, as well, when I was thinking about that, sometimes I know I go into the villain, but not just to sort of offset like my responsibilities, but often I'll judge people against my own standards. You know what I mean? And that's not right.
Well, it's good to have expectations around like good benchmarks of like good best practice, high performance. Like, it's good to expect a lot of yourself and of other people, but not to be comparative, because we're not apples for apples, So, but that villain piece often, and I'm doing this model really quickly. I could do a full day on this model, but this with the villain, often it's internalized. You might not verbally say it, you might do it in here. So it might be a dialogue with yourself. Even the victim, often people don't want to be seen as a victim, but with victim, it can be that you tend to you might do it internally. It's not always external. People don't always see it. But a change in behaviour is a good indicator when someone's resilience levels are low and they've dropped into this space. So when I go quiet, you kind of know there's something going on. I'm saying that really honestly. When I'm stressed, I tend to go quiet, which is a sign there's something going on. So sometimes it's great if you've got a colleague who can come and help pull you out of that. We're going to explore the empowerment dynamic in a sec. Are the results in rows? Can we see what people? So 56% hero, 22 villain, and 22 victims. So yeah, a good split. If you tend to find you're in hero, just be mindful that actually sometimes you're not helping someone by always doing it for them. It often comes from a good place, but you know, are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for them? Are you allowing them to learn the skill to be able to elevate and grow? Or is the quick fix to dive in? And, you know, often it is because you think you can do it better, or it's quicker. Sometimes you've got to feel the short-term pain for the long-term gain when you're training people up or you're handing off responsibilities. Yeah, so we'll obviously put anything in the chat for later if you've got any questions around those three roles. So bear that in mind. We're going to talk about the empowerment dynamic now. Thank you, Rose, that's great. So the empowerment dynamic, I mean, I'm all for providing a solution when you point out the challenges, because you know, it's great to know where we might be dropping from a drama triangle perspective, but what it would need to do to get out of that. So the roles, I'll show you here. The roles are, you'll see, the roles are creator, challenger, and coach. Now, again, you can move through these depending on the person that you're working with or you're dealing with. So say if it's just yourself, usually the hero becomes the coach. So if you tend to be more hero, you will naturally slip into coach easier, but you can then transition around the triangle. So the hero changes roles and becomes the coach. The coach doesn't try to fix anybody. They support, assist, and facilitate clarity by asking questions, either of themselves or others. So this is that open questioning technique where you question people for them to come up with their own answers and for them to then feel empowered in order to be able to take action themselves. So you don't swoop in and do it for them. You give them the assistance in order for them to do it themselves. And that coaching technique is, you know, it's really important that you step back and don't always just give the answer, because your answer might not necessarily be right. And I found this like years ago. I was a business advisor, and I remember doing some profiling, and I got told that I was offering a solution too quick. I was diving in and giving the solution, and actually I wasn't allowing the person the space to think for themselves enough. And sometimes you need to be able to do that question, and if they can come up with their own answer, they will be more likely to do something with it than if you just tell them the answer. So the coach piece is really, really important. Villain becomes the challenger. So if you opted for villain, you would be more likely to move into the challenger role. Challenger is where you bring a healthy pressure to yourself or others to challenge new ways of thinking and drive positive outcomes. So unlike the villain, you don't blame or criticize. You actually challenge. What can you do better? What can I do better? How can I take charge of this situation? So you either do that to yourself or to others with all of these roles. So even with a coach, like sometimes I find myself asking questions of myself. I coach myself. Okay, Sarah, what do you need to do? You know, with the challenger, it's like, come on, you've got this. You've got to, you know, like literally, what do I need to do in order to get myself in a healthy mindset, a positive mindset? So really challenge yourself, or if it's with your team, challenge your team. Get them to like come up with their own things, get them out of that drama triangle space and move them up, and get them to really think purposefully. What do I need to do? What action do I need to take? If you chose victim, victim becomes the creator generally. And the creator role is where you take responsibility. You stop complaining about what's happened and you actually just say, right, what am I going to do here? So the creator owns the power to choose and respond and focus on outcomes. So you need to get in the creator spot really before you can sort of help other people. If you're in the drama triangle, you can't elevate other people. It's not that you can't, it's hard to elevate other people into the empowerment dynamic. It's a bit like when they say put your life jacket on first before you help other people. You've got to get yourself into that spot first. So if you're in victim, that's where you feel powerless. When you become the creator, you actually feel like, I've got this. And you might not 100% believe it, but you have to tell yourself, come on, what do I need to do here? And it's that forward motion. What actions do I need to take? What's next? So if you look through the creator, the challenger, and the coach role, I know it sounds like I've made that sound super easy. It's not. That transition through from, I'll just show you this, from the drama triangle up. If you're sitting in the drama triangle, you tend to get stuck in the past. You're thinking about all the things that have gone wrong, all the things that have gone before. And what we want you to do is to get into that presence mindset of being in the here and now. What outcomes do I need to focus on? What am I driving towards here? And really being outcome focused rather than the past. That tends to pull you into that chaos and confusion mind space. So really being passion focused and outcome focused is in where the TED sits. So to elevate into your empowerment role, so either hero to coach, villain to challenger, or victim to creator, what 3 actions would you need to put in place? So what things could you do? So just to give you some examples, when you feel yourself feeling powerless, ask yourself, what can I do to take ownership of the situation and drive towards an outcome? What can I do? What can I do to take ownership? A lot of the times people feel like, they're waiting for something to happen. More often than enough, it's you've got to take the bull by the horns in your business, and you've got to take action. You've got to say, right, I need to do something different here. If you continue to do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So let's look at what we can do. Find a buddy at work who you can talk to, play challenger with, and help you see things from a different perspective. Really be careful about who you choose, because if they're in the drama triangle space, or they're the sort of people that will pull you down into there, they're not the best people to take advice from. So be careful about how you select that buddy. If you see yourself being dismissive and saying things like, it's not my problem, look at the things you can do to influence where you might be able to work with others to choose a solution. So if you find yourself being dismissive of things, stop and think, that's a trigger sign. Stop and think, what do I actually need to do here to get to the outcomes we need to get to? But it starts with you as a person, but we've had businesses where they've had whole teams sitting in the drama triangle space where they're like, my gosh, that team has dropped in there and, we need to get them out of it. We've had, key players in the leadership team, which have dropped in there and are finding it difficult to get out of there. And sometimes it can be really short-lived. What we want you to do with this insight is we can't stop you from ever dropping in there, because it's a fact of life. I find myself dropping in, but I get out of it quick. We want you to stay in there the least time possible and get into that healthy mindset of action forward, purposeful, present. What do I need to do? So really, the key takeaway is that, leaders and teams that learn to play in the creator, coach, or challenger roles above that line are more purposeful and more present. And they're more creative, they're more engaged, and they're aligned and energized. It has a massive impact on what you bring to the table if you're in the empowerment dynamic space. They have more fun. It's important. People underestimate the fun piece. Like, nobody wants to work in a business or in an office environment or with colleagues where there's no fun anymore. Like, it's important to re-energize. And that does make a way more productive and successful environment to nurture growth and elevation, to get people to be more productive. So that's the key takeaway. I don't know. I mean, do we want to open it out, Jamie, to some questions, or has anybody got anything they want to add? Have you got anything you want to ask?
Yeah, definitely. I think if there is any questions, please just pop them in the chat and I'll feed them across. But I'd be really interested to know what your thoughts are now in this sort of virtual world in which we're working and recruiting and so on. How would you identify, whether someone's dropped into, the below the line, and equally if they're from a different country, let's say if you've got developers from different countries, how would you even know, and how do you, work that into changing it as a culture?
Yeah, it's it's a tough one to spot it currently when you're not in, if you're working virtually, because a lot of the signs you might see sort of if you're in a working environment, but you can spot it. I mentioned earlier changes in behavior in yourself. If you find you're behaving more like different to what you normally do, if you spot it in a colleague, if they're normally quite outgoing and they go quiet, or the other reverse. Sometimes people can get a bit frantic when they're in the drama triangle space, and it can feel quite chaotic. If they're using language that's like, they're blaming, they're almost sort of criticizing other people, they're passing the buck. If they tend to feel like, if you can spot it if in victim, if they're doing very little. So if they're, they're just kind of, it's not my problem, that kind of, or just I'm powerless. And you can pick it up from demeanor and energy. Body language is massive. And even like this, that I'm a big advocate of video calls, because I can see how my team are doing by this. And I mean, we're body language experts, so we can spot it if there's incongruence. So where people are maybe saying one thing and their body language is telling us something else, or vice versa, where their body language is telling us something and their voice is telling us something, tone of voice. But ultimately, productivity. If productivity and motivation levels are dipping, it's a big sign that they're in the drama triangle space. And when you go into meetings, people, if you're going through a scorecard, for example, or some accountabilities, and you're saying, right, where are we at with this, and people aren't achieving, you've got to ask the question, where are they? Are they taking action? How are they presenting the problems? How are they tackling the issues? Are they being open about the problems and issues? So there's a lot of telltale signs. It's just, you've got to watch for them.
And I suppose that's kind of like, just doing that as the first step is a bit of a gateway to understanding your business anyway, because even once you've identified the issue, that's probably just the start of the journey, because it may be something wrong with your own processes, like you've got way too many processes in, or it may be to do with personal circumstance. There's a whole raft of potential reasons why they are there, but at least by stopping and looking, it allows you to start to address these issues.
Absolutely. And there's a great book. We do a whole leadership piece training on this, and we've done it with management and rest of the team, but it's called it's a book called Above the Line, and it's by a guy called Urban Myers. He's an American football coach, and his whole ethos is around being outcome focused, having sort of this positive mindset. He has the rule of no blaming, complaining, and defensive behavior. But he basically took an American football team from nothing, zero, to the best performing. And he was advised by a coach around some sort of principles. And he then wrote the book, and it's now like a worldwide bestseller that is used in business, in a business context. But it's really about your people are everything, and you are everything in your business, where that usually the biggest fixed cost that there is in a business, where if people's mindsets aren't in the right place, then they're not going to be able to operate and be productive and drive the outcomes you want. So a lot of this stuff is really, and this stuff is so useful outside of work, because sometimes you can be operating in the drama space personally, and you think that you have to operate, you bring that to the table at work. Now, we're one person, we can't say to people, don't bring your personal problems, because you're one person. However, making that divide and having the support from people within the business to elevate out of that, it's so refreshing. It stops people from stagnating and getting stuck.
Definitely. Yeah, we've got a question here from saying that it's difficult to see body language when staff working remotely and on Zoom. And they said, we have a clever senior member of staff who just wants a happy office and insists that a happy office will make everyone more productive.
Yeah, And you're absolutely right. Like body language is difficult, which is what, but literally watch out for language in emails. Like people, they'll say, they forget to put the hello in, they don't say the goodbye, the capital letter in, the exclamation, like people will tell you, watch out for that. If you're doing team meetings, get people to put their videos on, like if you're doing virtual team meetings, because that's important to say, like, we have it as a non-negotiable, like that team meeting's a video call, so we can help. We want to look after the well-being of our staff. It's interesting to talk about the happy place. What we don't want is forced happiness. We don't want people to pretend they're happy if they're not. Although bringing good energy and being mindful of the energy you bring into a room is, I'm all for that. Because if you're having a bad day, I used to have a manager years and years ago, I won't name names, but it was a long time ago when I was first in a graduate role. And literally, we all lived and died by her mood. So depending on how she walked through the door, we knew what kind of day we were going to have. And I remember at 21 vouching, I was never going to be that person. So the happy office, I think this senior member of staff sounds like their intentions are fabulous, but we also want people to feel comfortable to bring challenges, issues. We can't all just be happy all of the time, because what we don't want to do is to have like a fake office environment. But energy, absolutely, bring your best energy to the table if you can.
Yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, it was just another one around the author, Urban Mayor, and above the line whether there's an ISBN number, which I'm not sure if Ian or Rose is able to find that and pop it in the message in this period of time, which would be great.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was going to say as well is often you'll find these things where you can use internal measuring of how the sentiment of the company's doing and so on, and whether you have, if it's done anonymously, you're quite happy to kind of be vocal about what it is that's probably frustrating, but whether you've got to put your name in as well, that sometimes you don't get a true reflection of actually how that business is going as well. And I suppose that comes into that whole trust element as well, because I know there's a couple of good books out there around trust and the trust dividend, and it speeds up transactions and so on as well, and how important is it to build trust within an organization. It was Stephen Covey, I believe, The Speed of Trust. It's a fantastic book.
Yeah, and we deliver leadership training, and we've got a big piece around actually there's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Leadership Team, and we've done some stuff based on some of the elements of that. But for me, trust is the first piece. Like there's a difference between predictive trust and vulnerability based trust. So predictive trust is where you just know someone's going to do something because they said they do it, and they've done it for years and years, and if you ask them, they'll do it. So that predictive piece in business tends to come quicker than the vulnerability. The vulnerability based trust is stuff where you feel like you can actually be yourself and be vulnerable, but not I don't mean like as in an emotional way. So I've got to keep that emotional intelligence in check, but where you're expressing empathy. We found that there's been a lot of people have struggled between making changes within the business and then communicating it to their staff, and it's been lost in translation because they haven't managed to connect to the vulnerability trust piece. So absolutely, trust is massive with regards to any of this. But if you nurture a culture within an organization that encourages elevation and being purposeful and looking at outcomes and being outcome driven and helping each other elevate out of that drama triangle space, for example, no blaming, no complaining, don't get defensive, we're all working together. If you can nurture a culture like that, then you're way more likely to have a productive workforce who's all driving they're all on the same bus, and going in the same direction.
And would you say as well, because if you look, typically where it's difficult to establish trust, or where you get a lot of naming, blaming, etc., in those tall hierarchical structures, and actually when you're setting up your business, in many ways, especially I think now moving forwards, having more flatter structure allows you to engender trust much more. But equally, if you've got this shared approach, hopefully you'll have you know, you'll be above the line more often, one would have thought.
What's interesting with that though, Jamie, I'm all for like relative, that everybody has a place and a part to play, but you do still need an element of hierarchy often within a business, because currently, if you look at leadership, like we need people to lead from the front. We need direction. We need to be told. I mean, we won't get into politics. There's been a lot of great examples where that's happened. You know, the New Zealand Prime Minister has done a fantastic job of leading from the front, and her vulnerability piece is amazing. She connects with her people. And I think in a business context, you do need to have someone or people who have the leadership skills to be able to direct the direction. The culture is about everybody then getting on board and everybody playing a part in driving the culture of the business. But I think the leadership piece and the culture piece, everybody's involved in the culture. The leadership piece still needs to be there, particularly during times of change where resilience levels are tested. It's really, you lose sight of what the outcome is you're focusing on. You're too busy like fighting fires, like stop and thinking, what do we need to look at? What's the outcome we need to achieve here? How do we get there? Really thinking, like really, you know, taking those purposeful actions is like, it's really important. And, you know, it starts with the leadership. It starts with the owners, the leaders, the managers. Like they have to address that with themselves first.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the difficulties again is, I mean, I could talk about this forever. I think it's really fascinating, but it's is when you've got these different layers as well, and you'll have certain managers who are very aspirational that won't actually feed back into senior management. So senior management therefore don't really know where the issues are at that sort of ground level. And
accountability is a big piece, you know, like everybody having visibility of who's accountable for what and who's driving what, I think is really important. You know, that often that gets missed. People have their roles and they stick in their lane. But I think sharing that sort of the responsibilities for strategy at the top and then getting the managers on board, depends how, you know, how big the business is. But even for a small business, that's important, you know. But really, it's about encouraging the right behaviours, the right mindsets, and also helping yourself and the people around you, you know, to put infrastructure. We use the drama triangle stuff a lot with one-to-ones when people come to us with real issues and where they're stuck in a bad place, and often they don't even realise they're in there, you know, or they're having an issue with another member of staff and they're both in the drama triangle, and how do you get out of that? So there's lots of ways this model can be used. If you think about it, it's not it's a really useful model, I think.
Absolutely. I think it'd be fantastic in performance reviews, as you know, it's almost like part of your balance scorecard, if that's what you're using, or whatever review that you've got, is that you can see whether people can self-assess whether they've dropped into that zone and what they could do to move themselves forward.
For sure.
But brilliant. Listen, I think we're running out of time, but thank you so much. That was super interesting. And it was great having everybody else with us today. So I just want to thank you all for watching. And if you do want to go back and rewatch any of today's webinars, it'll be on the Growth Hub's YouTube page, alongside with all of our other previous webinars. So next week we have a session on digital marketing for exporters. So hopefully we will see you all there. So thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Bye.